I am Dolores, 30 years old, and was buttoning my coat to head to Sunday dinner at my parents' when my phone buzzed. A text from Benjamin, my lawyer. Call me immediately. My hands trembled as I dialed. What he told me froze my blood. My parents, the people I trusted most, were being investigated for massive fraud. The $50,000 I planned to invest in their business tonight would disappear into thin air along with them. I collapsed onto my couch, mind spinning with betrayal. If you are watching this from somewhere your family cannot see your screen, hit subscribe and let me know where you are hiding out while I tell you how my entire world crumbled in one phone call. 6 months ago, I moved back to Portland after my divorce from Alan. 10 years of marriage dissolved in papers and property divisions, leaving me emotionally drained but financially stable. My ex might have left me for his 23-year-old assistant, but at least the settlement was fair. I purchased a small townhouse near downtown and resumed my career as a marketing executive at a local firm. Starting over at 30 was not my plan, but having my parents nearby made the transition bearable. Martha and Richard, my parents, were pillars of the community. My father built his reputation as a financial advisor, helping families plan for retirement and college funds. His office downtown displayed certificates and awards for excellence in financial planning. My mother, equally respected, sold high-end real estate to Portland professionals and served on 3 different charity boards. They attended church every Sunday, hosted neighborhood barbecues, and never missed an opportunity to mention their successful daughter who worked in marketing. When Alan left, they rallied around me. Mom came to stay for 2 weeks, cooking comfort food and helping me sort through the shared possessions of a decade-long marriage. Dad handled calls with the mortgage company, insurance adjusters, and credit card companies. They were my safety net, catching me when my life collapsed. Family is all that matters in the end, Dad would say, patting my shoulder as I cried over photo albums. Blood is thicker than water, Dolores. We will always be here for you. Benjamin Walker entered my life as the divorce attorney a college friend recommended. Efficient, direct, and surprisingly empathetic, he guided me through the legal maze while protecting my interests. After the divorce finalized, I retained his services for purchasing my new home. He proved invaluable, spotting contract issues I would have missed and negotiating favorable terms. We developed a friendly professional relationship, occasionally meeting for coffee to discuss my financial planning. 2 months ago, my parents invited me to dinner and unveiled their exciting new venture, luxury vacation rentals, in coastal Oregon. They had already purchased 2 properties and were securing 4 more. We have been planning this for years, Mom explained, showing me photos of beautiful oceanfront homes. The investment returns are incredible, and we have already booked the existing properties solid through summer. Dad spread spreadsheets across the dining table, pointing to projected income and growth charts. We are offering this opportunity to a select group of family members and close friends. Initial investors get priority profit distribution for the first 5 years. They suggested I invest my divorce settlement, approximately $50,000. The timing seemed perfect. I was rebuilding my life, and this could provide additional income and eventual retirement security. Plus, working with my parents meant I could trust the operation completely. Think about it, Mom said, squeezing my hand. This could be your fresh start, too. Over the following weeks, they shared more details. The business had a name, Coastal Luxury Retreats. They introduced me to their property manager, Thomas, via video call. Though technical difficulties prevented me from seeing him clearly, each conversation increased my confidence in their business acumen. Tonight was supposed to be the culmination dinner at their house, signing paperwork, and officially joining the family business. I had the cashier's check in my purse, ready to invest in my future. Then Benjamin texted, Dolores, I discovered something concerning while doing property checks for another client, he explained once I called. Your parents' names appeared in multiple lawsuits for fraud in 3 different counties. I dug deeper and found a pattern dating back years. Different business names, similar schemes. My stomach dropped as he continued. There are allegations of Ponzi schemes, fraudulent investment opportunities, and misappropriation of funds. The most recent case was filed just last month by a retired teacher who invested her entire pension in a guaranteed return property venture. There must be some mistake, I insisted, voice rising. My parents are respected community members. Dad has managed investments for decades. That is exactly how they built trust, Benjamin replied gently. But according to court records, they have settled multiple cases privately, moved between states, and operated under various business names. Dolores, something does not add up about their finances. The properties they showed you, I checked the records. They do not own them. My mind rebelled against his words. My parents, the people who taught me honesty and integrity, could not possibly be running cons. It was inconceivable. The dinner tonight, Benjamin continued. Is it about the investment opportunity they offered you? Yes, I whispered, recalling the cashier's check in my purse. $50,000. Do not sign anything, he urged. Do not give them any money. I need time to investigate further. But Dolores, I am concerned they are planning to disappear with investors' money. Soon. After hanging up with Benjamin, I sat frozen on my couch, his warnings echoing in my head. Could my loving parents really be con artists? The parents who taught me to return extra change at the grocery store? Who lectured me about honesty being the foundation of character? Benjamin had emailed court documents while we spoke. With trembling fingers, I opened them on my phone. Lawsuits in Oregon, Washington, and California named Martha and Richard Thompson, my parents, as defendants in fraud cases. One complaint detailed how they had convinced a retired couple to invest their life savings in a non-existent restaurant franchise. Another described an exclusive investment group for luxury condominiums that never materialized. The plaintiff's name struck me with sickening familiarity. The Johnsons, who moved away suddenly when I was in high school. The Petersons, who had been close family friends until a mysterious falling out. Mrs. Wilson, my former piano teacher, who stopped speaking to my parents after investing in one of Dad's special opportunities. Small inconsistencies throughout my life suddenly aligned like puzzle pieces. Our family moved 3 times during my childhood, always to pursue better opportunities, according to my parents. Each move happened quickly, often in the middle of school years, leaving friendships and connections behind. I recalled how secretive my parents were about their business dealings. When I brought friends home, financial discussions ceased. Dad's office door remained locked. Mom deflected questions about their investments with vague references to diverse portfolios and private client matters. They discouraged deep friendships, emphasizing family loyalty above all else. Friends come and go, but family is forever, Mom would say when I cried about leaving best friends behind. Trust is earned through blood. Even more troubling was their reaction to my college boyfriend James, who studied finance. When he asked Dad professional questions, seeking mentorship, my father became uncharacteristically defensive. Their opposition to our relationship intensified until we broke up. At the time, I attributed it to normal parental protectiveness. Despite Benjamin's warning, I decided to attend dinner anyway. I needed to see for myself, to observe their behavior with new awareness. I would not confront them yet, just watch and listen with open eyes. When I arrived at their elegant colonial home in the suburbs, I noticed details I had overlooked before. The new Mercedes in the driveway. Mom's diamond earrings that seemed larger than her previous set. The original artwork that had replaced department store prints. Dolores, darling? Mom embraced me, her designer perfume enveloping us both. We have been counting the minutes. This is such an exciting night for our family. Dad hugged me next, his gold watch glinting under the entryway light. The beginning of a beautiful partnership, he declared, leading me into the living room where appetizers and champagne awaited. Everything appeared normal. The careful table setting, Mom's famous pot roast in the oven, their warm smiles yet subtle differences emerged. Dad's phone buzzed constantly, prompting him to step outside for hushed conversations. Mom checked the time repeatedly, mentioning they should wrap up the paperwork part early so we could enjoy dinner. "We have all the documents ready," she said, gesturing to a folder on the coffee table. "Simple signatures, and you will be officially part of Coastal Luxury Retreats." I picked up the folder, noticing unfamiliar names listed as business partners: Samuel Richardson, Victoria Hamilton, Edward Montgomery. None of these people had been mentioned in our previous discussions. "Who are these partners?" I asked casually. "Just legal entities for tax purposes," Dad replied too quickly. "Nothing for you to worry about." Mom refilled my champagne glass. "The important thing is that your investment is secured against the properties. Guaranteed returns beginning next quarter." As they discussed the business, contradictions emerged. Last week, they mentioned 4 new properties under contract. Tonight, it was 6. Previously, profit distributions would begin after 6 months. Now, they promised immediate returns. The business address had changed from Seaside to Cannon Beach. "We should really sign these papers before dinner gets cold," Mom insisted, uncapping an expensive pen. "The notary charged extra for Sunday service, so we should make it worthwhile." The pressure to sign immediately, combined with their shifting details, confirmed my worst fears. Something was very wrong with my parents' business venture. Yet part of me still hoped for an innocent explanation, a misunderstanding, a legal complication they were too embarrassed to share. That hope diminished when I excused myself to use the restroom and glimpsed Dad's briefcase in the hallway, partially open. Inside were plane tickets to Buenos Aires, departing Tuesday, 2 days from now. Mom had mentioned nothing about an upcoming trip. My heart pounded as I made my way back to the living room, where my parents waited with expectant smiles and a contract that would strip me of my financial security and, far worse, shatter the foundation of trust that had defined our relationship. "Before we sign anything, I would love to see those updated projections you mentioned last week," I said, forcing a smile while buying time. The cashier's check remained securely in my purse, and I intended to keep it there. Dad's expression flickered with impatience. "We can go through all that after the paperwork. The important thing is locking in your position before the remaining slots fill up. We already have 3 other investors ready, if you need more time," Mom added with unusual sharpness. "The Richardsons called yesterday practically begging to increase their stake. Their pressure tactics felt obvious now that Benjamin had pulled back the curtain." I excused myself again, this time to take a fictional call from work. Instead, I slipped into Dad's home office, a room that had always been off-limits during family gatherings. The door was unlocked, a rare occurrence. Inside, leather-bound planners and organized files conveyed professional legitimacy. But the southern wall caught my attention. A corkboard covered with travel brochures for Belize, Panama, and Argentina, all countries with no extradition treaties with the United States. My hands shook as I quietly opened the desk drawer. Inside was a folder labeled CLR, investors containing spreadsheets, listing names, investment amounts, and contact information. The total exceeded $3 million, with contribution dates stretching back 18 months. Many names I recognized: family friends, church members, elderly neighbors trusting people who respected my parents. In another drawer, I discovered a locked box. The key was hidden beneath the desk blotter. Dad always used the same hiding places. Inside were 4 passports, 2 with my parents' photos, but different names: Robert and Elizabeth Carson, James and Margaret Wilson. Multiple driver's licenses and credit cards matching these identities. Cold sweat broke out across my forehead as memories rushed back. Age 8. Moving from Seattle overnight after Dad's business partner allegedly embezzled funds. Age 13. Changing schools mid-year because Mom found better educational opportunities in another district. Age 17. The unexplained fire at Dad's office that destroyed financial records just before a scheduled audit. The most damning evidence was a notebook containing what appeared to be exit strategies. Lists of assets to liquidate, accounts to close, and a timeline for disappearing. My name appeared on one page with a note. 50 kelvins secured. Close loop after transfer. I was not just another victim. I was the final mark before they vanished. Footsteps approached the office. I quickly returned everything to its place and pretended to be finishing my call when Mom appeared at the door. "Dinner is getting cold, sweetie," she said, eyes darting around the office. "Everything okay?" "Just work emergencies," I lied, noting how easily deception came to me now. "Let me wash up and I will be right there." At the dinner table, my parents discussed their business trip next week, a scouting mission for new properties, they claimed. No mention of Buenos Aires or one-way tickets. "We will be managing your investment remotely for a few weeks," Dad explained between bites of pot roast. "Thomas will handle the day-to-day operations while we secure the new acquisitions." "The timing is perfect," Mom added. "With your money, we can close on the seaside property immediately." Their words now carried double meanings. Every smile seemed calculated, every gesture part of a performance honed over decades. These were not the parents who raised me, or perhaps they were, and I had never truly known them at all. "When do I get to meet the other investors?" I asked innocently. "Perhaps we could have a group meeting before your trip." Their exchanged glance lasted only a fraction of a second, but I caught it panic, quickly disguised. "Everyone is quite busy," Mom replied smoothly. "Many are out-of-state investors who trust our management implicitly." Dad's phone rang again. He checked the screen and stood abruptly. "I need to take this. Business never sleeps." He stepped onto the back porch, closing the door behind him, but not before I heard, "We need to move now. She is getting suspicious." My stomach clenched as I realized he was talking about me. In that moment, any lingering doubt evaporated. My parents were con artists, and I was their next victim. Mom refilled wine glasses, chattering about coastal property values and rental trends. Her words washed over me as I struggled to reconcile this smiling stranger with the woman who had bandaged my knees and checked for monsters under my bed. When Dad returned, his face was composed, but his eyes held new intensity. "Let us finish up with the paperwork, shall we? It is getting late." The contract appeared again, placed before me with the elegant pen. 5 decades of love and trust, balanced against mounting evidence of betrayal. I could no longer pretend. "Before I sign," I said, voice steadier than I felt, "can you walk me through exactly how the business operates? The complete structure?" Mom laughed lightly. "Darling, we have been over this several times. The investment is secured against physical properties." "Which properties exactly?" I pressed. "I would like addresses, current valuations, and title confirmation." Dad's smile tightened. "Those details are in the prospectus. Right now, we just need your signature and investment to secure your position." "The notary is waiting," Mom added, glancing at her watch. "We are paying her hourly." I took a deep breath. "I checked county records today. You do not own properties in Seaside or Cannon Beach. The addresses you provided are registered to different owners." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mom's smile remained fixed, while Dad's expression hardened. "There must be some confusion about the addresses," he said carefully. "The properties are held in an LLC for tax purposes." "Which LLC? Richardson Holdings? Victoria Enterprises? Or is it Carson Investments?" I watched their faces as I named the aliases I had discovered. Dad's phone rang again. He answered it, stepping away but remaining visible through the dining room archway. His whispered words carried enough for me to hear. "We need to move now. She knows something." When he returned, something had changed in his demeanor. The warm father persona had vanished, replaced by a calculating stranger who assessed me coolly. "Who have you been talking to?" he demanded. "Does it matter?" I countered. "What matters is that you were planning to take my money and disappear to Buenos Aires on Tuesday." Mom's glass clattered against the table, spilling red wine across the white tablecloth. "You went through your father's things. Not a question, an accusation. Like father, like daughter," I replied. "Apparently, I learned investigation skills from the best. Dad sat down heavily, exchanging glances with Mom. The pretense collapsed between us. You do not understand how the world works, Dolores, he said, voice now businesslike. Everyone is trying to take advantage. We just beat them to it. By stealing from elderly neighbors? Church friends? Your own daughter? My voice cracked. We prefer aggressive investment strategy, Mom replied with shocking callousness. Nobody forces these people to invest. They throw money at opportunities because they are greedy for returns. How long? I whispered. How long have you been doing this? Dad shrugged. 25 years. Started small, after my legitimate financial practice went under. Discovered people trust credentials and confidence more than they verify facts. The timeline meant my entire childhood was built on fraud. Every home, every school, every vacation funded by stolen money. You were going to steal from me too. The realization burned like acid. Business is business, Dad said flatly. You were always too trusting, just like our investors. We taught you about family loyalty precisely because it makes people predictable. Mom reached across the table, her hand stopping short of touching mine. Darling, we would have sent you something eventually. A token. We are not monsters. Their justifications unleashed the dam of emotions I had been holding back. Tears streamed down my face as 30 years of memories recontextualized themselves. The parents who comforted me, celebrated my achievements, and supported me through divorce were the same people who had systematically destroyed countless lives for profit. Everything was a lie, I choked out. Every lesson about honesty, every family moment, just part of your long con. Not everything, Mom insisted, a flicker of genuine emotion crossing her face. We do love you, Dolores. In our way. Your way includes stealing my divorce settlement and disappearing forever. Dad checked his watch impatiently. This emotional scene is unnecessary. You know now. You will not invest. End of story. Not end of story, I said, standing up. Beginning of consequences. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means I know names, dates, amounts. I know about the Johnsons, the Petersons, Mrs. Wilson. I know about your planned escape to Argentina. You would not turn in your own parents, Mom said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Why not? You have been planning to victimize your own daughter. Dad stood suddenly, his chair scraping against hardwood. You need to think very carefully about your next steps, Dolores. Family protects family. You stopped being my family the moment I became your mark. I grabbed my purse and backed toward the door. Enjoy your dinner. It might be your last home-cooked meal for a while. Mom rose, panic replacing her composed facade. Dolores, wait. We can explain everything. There are circumstances you do not understand. But I was already moving toward the front door, tears blurring my vision. Behind me, I heard Dad's cold voice. Let her go. We accelerate the timeline. Tonight. I stumbled to my car and somehow drove away from the house, where my entire understanding of family had just imploded. The foundations of my life had crumbled, leaving me adrift in a reality where nothing was as it seemed. I drove aimlessly through Portland's rainy streets, windshield wipers keeping rhythm with my racing thoughts. Eventually, I pulled into an empty supermarket parking lot and called Benjamin. I need to see you, I managed between sobs. You were right about everything. 30 minutes later, I sat in his office, security lights casting harsh shadows across the weekend-empty law firm. I detailed my discoveries, the fake identities, the investor list, the escape plans. I could have been just another victim, I concluded, exhaustion replacing tears. They raised me for 30 years, then planned to take my money and vanish. Benjamin's expression remained professional, but his eyes reflected compassion. You need to understand something important, Dolores. This is not your fault. Con artists, even when they are your parents, excel at manipulation. They build trust, specifically to exploit it. He opened his laptop, showing me additional research he had conducted since our call. Articles about investment scams in different states, featuring suspects whose descriptions matched my parents', though names differed. Property records showing rapid acquisitions and sales. Business registrations that appeared and disappeared within months. I contacted Detective Larson with Portland's Financial Crimes Unit, Benjamin said. She has been investigating similar cases and believes your parents may be connected to a larger pattern. By morning, I sat across from Detective Larson, a focused woman with prematurely gray hair and eyes that had seen every variety of human deception. Your parents operate what we call an affinity fraud, she explained, organizing photos and documents. They target communities where they have established trust churches, neighborhoods, professional associations. The family connection adds another layer of perceived security for victims. She showed me a map marked with pins representing known victims across 3 states. Over 50 people, many elderly, had lost savings ranging from $20,000 to $500,000. Most victims never report, Detective Larson continued. They feel embarrassed or, in family cases, conflicted about turning in relatives. Your testimony could be crucial in building our case. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on my shoulders. Will coming forward help recover any money for these people? Potentially. We believe your parents have offshore accounts. With solid evidence and international cooperation, we might recover some assets. That afternoon, I met Grace Henderson, a 78-year-old retired nurse who had invested her late husband's life insurance with my mother 2 years ago. $200,000, her entire financial safety net gone. Martha was so kind, Grace explained, hands trembling around her teacup. She brought me meals after Harold died, helped me organize his papers, said she considered me family, and wanted to ensure I was taken care of. Her vulnerability reflected my own. The same trust, the same betrayal. But while I was young enough to rebuild financially, Grace faced an uncertain future of Social Security checks and part-time work to make ends meet. They were so convincing, she whispered. I never questioned their intentions. Meeting Grace solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about my broken trust or stolen money. It was about justice for dozens of vulnerable people who had lost everything. What do you need me to do? I asked Detective Larson when we reconvened. We need recorded evidence of their scheme. Your parents are careful they operate just under legal thresholds and move before patterns emerge. But with your help, we could get them on record, admitting to fraud. You want me to wear a wire? The thought of facing my parents again sent panic coursing through me. It would be the most direct path to evidence, she confirmed. You would contact them, express regret about your reaction, and say you have reconsidered their offer. Get them talking about their operation, past ventures, and future plans. Benjamin, who had stayed by my side throughout, interjected. This is completely voluntary, Dolores. There are other ways to build a case. But I already knew my answer. I will do it. Tomorrow night before their flight. That evening, Detective Larson and a technical specialist briefed me on the recording equipment, a modified phone that would transmit our conversation to officers stationed nearby. We developed a strategy. I would express interest in joining their operation rather than just investing, prompting them to explain their methods in detail. Ask specific questions, Detective Larson advised. How they identify targets, how they move money, where they establish new identities. The more details they provide, the stronger our case. I spent that night in a hotel, unable to return to my townhouse where family photos still adorned the walls. Sleep eluded me as I wrestled with the magnitude of betrayal and the gravity of my decision. These were the people who had given me life, who had shaped my values, even if those values were meant to make me a more effective mark. By morning, I had found a strange clarity. The parents I thought I had were illusions, carefully crafted characters in a decades-long performance. My loyalty belonged to truth, and to victims like Grace, not to the actors who had played mother and father while plotting to exploit me. When Detective Larson arrived to prepare me for the operation, she found me calm and resolved. We will be nearby the entire time, she assured me, adjusting the recording device. Any sign of danger, say the phrase, "I need to think about the timeline," and we intervene immediately. Benjamin insisted on waiting in the surveillance van. Remember, you are not confronting them, he reminded me. You are gathering information. Stay curious, not accusatory. As I drove toward my parents' house one final time, I felt my role shifting from victim to agent of justice. The daughter they raised to be trusting and loyal was instead becoming the instrument of their downfall. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, suitcases stood in the foyer, packed for their business trip to Argentina. Mom answered the door with visible surprise. "Dolores, we did not expect to see you again so soon." "I have been thinking about our conversation," I said, heart pounding so loudly, I feared the microphone would pick it up. "Can we talk?" Dad appeared behind her, suspicion evident in his stance. "About what?" "About the business. About everything." I met his gaze steadily. "I may have overreacted yesterday." They exchanged glances before Mom stepped aside. "Of course, darling. Come in." The living room showed signs of hasty packing, empty spaces where valuable art had hung, cabinets standing open. They had been preparing to flee. "I realized something after I left," I began, perching on the edge of the sofa. "You have been doing this successfully for 25 years. There must be substantial profits involved." Dad remained standing, arms crossed. "What is your point?" "Maybe I am in the wrong business. Marketing pays well, but clearly not as well as what you do." I leaned forward, adopting their pragmatic tone from the previous night. "Perhaps instead of just investing, I should be learning the family business, for real." The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. "You want to join us?" Mom asked incredulously. "Why not? As you said, everyone tries to take advantage in this world. You have obviously mastered the system." Each word tasted bitter, but I maintained an eager expression. Dad sat down slowly, studying me with new interest. "What changed your mind?" "I realized you were right about people being gullible. They trust too easily. I have been doing it my whole life, trusting friends, colleagues, Alan." I shrugged. "Look where conventional honesty got me. Divorced at 30, starting over. Meanwhile, you have been prospering for decades." Their suspicion began melting into cautious optimism. The prospect of keeping their daughter in their lives while continuing their schemes appealed to whatever twisted version of parental love they possessed. "It is not an easy life," Dad said, testing my commitment. "Constant movement, new identities, always looking over your shoulder. But the rewards compensate for the inconveniences, right?" I gestured around at their luxury furnishings. "Besides, 3 people working together would be more efficient than 2. Mom moved to sit beside me, taking my hand. "Dolores, are you certain? Once you cross certain lines, there is no going back to conventional life." "I am my parents' daughter, after all," I replied, squeezing her hand while suppressing revulsion. "So, tell me how it really works. Everything. If I am joining the family business, I need to understand the operation completely." For the next hour, they detailed their methodology with disturbing pride. Dad explained how they selected hunting grounds, affluent communities with strong social networks, where trust transferred by association. "Churches are gold mines," he explained. "Once the pastor or a few respected elders invest, others follow without question. Everyone assumes someone else has done due diligence." Mom described how they established credibility, joining civic organizations, making small charitable donations, befriending influential community members. "We always start legitimate businesses as fronts," she explained. "Richard actually worked as a financial advisor initially. I sold real estate. Those credentials and licenses provide the foundation." They outlined their targeting strategy, focusing on recent widows, retirees with substantial savings, and busy professionals who had money but lacked time for detailed investment research. "The key is making them come to you," Dad explained. "Plant seeds about your successful investments. Let them ask for inclusion. People value what they pursue more than what is offered freely. Most disturbingly, they detailed their exit strategies, how they gradually moved money offshore, established new identities, and disappeared just before suspicions coalesced into investigations. We typically net between 1 and 3 million per cycle, Dad said matter-of-factly. 4 to 5 years in a location is optimal enough time to build trust, but not so long that patterns become obvious. Mom added, "We have networks in South America, identities prepared years in advance. The current iteration, Martha and Richard Thompson, has nearly reached its expiration date." As they spoke, I asked clarifying questions, drawing out specific examples from previous cons. They named cities, schemes, approximate dates, all transmitted directly to Detective Larson through my modified phone. "What about people like the Johnsons or Mrs. Wilson?" I asked. "Were they special cases?" Jim Johnson was becoming suspicious, Dad recalled without remorse. Started asking about property titles. We accelerated our timeline and left Seattle 3 months ahead of schedule. "And the fire at your office before the audit?" I prompted. "Insurance fraud bonus?" He chuckled. "Destroyed problematic records and collected $200,000 for building and contents." When I had gathered sufficient evidence, I gave the signal. "This timeline seems rushed. When exactly were you planning to tell me about Argentina?" "After we were settled," Mom admitted. "We would have sent for you eventually. Or at least returned some of your investment," Dad added with a shrug. "Family discount." The doorbell rang. Mom frowned. "Are you expecting someone?" "Actually, yes." I stood as realization dawned on their faces. "I brought some business associates who are very interested in your investment strategies." Detective Larson entered with 4 officers, badges displayed. "Martha and Richard Thompson, you are under arrest for investment fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy." The transformation was immediate. Mom collapsed into sobs, while Dad's face hardened into contempt. "You recorded us," he spat as an officer handcuffed him. "Your own parents." "I learned from the best," I replied, voice breaking despite my resolve. "Family first, right?" As they were led away, Mom looked back, tears streaming down her face. "Dolores, please. We can explain everything." But there were no explanations that could rebuild what had been destroyed. I watched silently as police cars carried away the strangers who had raised me. The aftermath unfolded in waves. Local media seized on the story, respected community members revealed as serial fraudsters, exposed by their own daughter. Some reporters painted me as heroic, others questioned how I could betray my parents. Online comments ranged from supportive to accusatory. Family friends divided into camps. Some, particularly those who had invested, expressed gratitude for my courage. Others condemned me for not handling it within the family. Several relatives stopped speaking to me entirely, unwilling to believe the evidence presented. The legal process ground forward methodically. My parents hired expensive attorneys who specializes in financial crimes. They attempted to characterize their activities as aggressive but legal investment strategies and misunderstandings with investors. I testified before the grand jury, providing context for the recorded evidence. Sitting in the witness box, facing the parents who had planned to victimize me, required every ounce of strength I possessed. "How could you do this to your own daughter?" Dad's attorney asked during cross-examination, attempting to paint me as vindictive. "That is a question better directed at my parents," I replied steadily. "They were planning to steal my life savings before disappearing permanently." Eventually, prosecutors uncovered offshore accounts containing approximately $2 million, a fraction of what they had stolen over decades, but enough to begin restitution for recent victims. 3 months after their arrest, I visited them in county jail. Security glass separated us as I faced the people who had given me life yet betrayed every principle they claimed to instill. "Why did you come?" Dad asked, no warmth in his eyes. "To understand," I replied. "Was any of it real? Any moment of my childhood? Or was I always just part of the long con?" Mom leaned forward. "We love you, Dolores. That was never fake. We just have a different understanding of how the world works. You were planning to steal from me, I reminded her. Business and family are separate considerations, Dad interjected. We always intended to make it right eventually. Even now, they could not speak truth. Even faced with overwhelming evidence and years in prison, they maintained their deceptions. You taught me that integrity matters, I said, standing to leave. I suppose I should thank you for that lesson, even if you never believed it yourselves. Dad called after me as I walked away. When we get out, we can start fresh, a new venture together. His words confirmed what I already knew they would never change. The con was not just their profession, it was their identity, and it was time for me to forge an identity entirely separate from their influence. 1 year passed. I relocated to Seattle, finding a senior marketing position with a technology firm. My townhouse in Portland sold quickly, severing another tie to my previous life. The new city offered anonymity and distance from the whispers that had followed me after my parents' arrest. Their trial concluded with guilty verdicts on multiple counts. Dad received 12 years, Mom, 8, due to her secondary role in the schemes. The judge ordered restitution payments to identified victims, though many would recover only cents on the dollar. My healing journey began with therapy. Dr. Marshall specialized in family betrayal trauma and helped me understand that grief for people who are still living can be more complicated than mourning the dead. You are grieving the parents you thought you had, she explained during an early session. The relationship you believed in never actually existed. That is a profound loss. Working through anger proved most challenging. Not just anger at my parents, but at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. How many victims might have been spared if I had questioned their lifestyle sooner? You were a child, raised to trust them implicitly, Dr. Marshall reminded me. Children are not responsible for recognizing their parents' criminality. Gradually, I channeled my experience into positive action. I joined a fraud victim advocacy group, eventually serving on their board. We created resources specifically for family members of white-collar criminals, people struggling with the dual trauma of betrayal and social stigma. My marketing background proved valuable as we developed public education campaigns about affinity fraud. I spoke at community centers and retirement homes, helping potential victims recognize warning signs my parents had perfected. Fraudsters count on your politeness, I would explain to audiences. They expect you not to ask difficult questions or verify their claims independently. Breaking that social contract feels uncomfortable but protects your financial future. My most meaningful connection formed with Grace Henderson, who had lost her life savings to my mother. After the trial, I contacted each victim personally, offering whatever support I could provide. With Grace, the relationship deepened into genuine friendship. You remind me of my daughter, she told me over coffee one afternoon. She lives in Australia now, same determination in your eyes. Grace joined me at fraud prevention workshops, sharing her experience with devastating honesty. Her presence reminded audiences that victims were not foolish or greedy, just trusting individuals caught in sophisticated psychological traps. We celebrated small victories together. Her successful application for subsidized senior housing, my promotion at work, the day she received her first restitution check for $3,000, a fraction of what she lost, but symbolically significant. Your parents took my money, Grace said once, but through you, I gained something more valuable: purpose in my final years. Such moments helped rebuild my faith in human connection. I developed new friendships in Seattle, approaching them with careful openness. Trust came more slowly now, but when given, it was more meaningful for being deliberately chosen rather than automatically granted. Joseph, a graphic designer I met through volunteer work, became particularly important in my healing journey. When I finally shared my full story with him, his response was simple: "That shaped you, but it does not define you." 6 months into our relationship, I received a letter from Mom. Her elegant handwriting filled pages with reminiscences about my childhood, declarations of maternal love, and subtle manipulations suggesting I could help secure early parole if I testified about their positive parenting. Joseph found me crying at my kitchen table, the letter crumpled beside me. "She still thinks I am a potential mark," I explained through tears. "What will you do?" he asked, not advising, just supporting. After long consideration, I wrote back a single paragraph. "I am building a life based on genuine connections and integrity. When you are ready to speak truth without manipulation, I will listen. Until then, I wish you healing and self-reflection during your incarceration." It was the last communication we exchanged. Dad never wrote at all. By the second anniversary of their arrest, I had established a new definition of family, one based on chosen connections rather than blood relation. My support network included Joseph, Grace, colleagues from the advocacy group, and friends who had stood by me through the darkest days. "Family is not defined by DNA," I explained to a support group for children of incarcerated parents. "Family consists of people who nurture your authentic self, who value your well-being above their personal gain, who demonstrate love through actions rather than manipulation." The deeper lesson emerging from my experience was complex but clarifying. Integrity matters more than blood ties or misplaced loyalty. Ethical boundaries cannot be suspended for family when family itself becomes predatory. I no longer blamed myself for turning in my parents. Their actions had forced an impossible choice, and I had chosen justice for vulnerable victims over protection of those who had violated trust systematically. "The greatest freedom," I wrote in my journal on the second anniversary of their arrest, "is building a life anchored in truth rather than comforting illusions." The family mythology I cherished was beautiful but hollow. The reality I live now, imperfect, sometimes painful, but authentic, provides a foundation for genuine connection impossible in the shadow of lies. This understanding did not eliminate difficult days. Holidays brought painful awareness of traditional family gatherings I no longer experienced. Certain songs or scents triggered memories of moments that felt genuine, but were contextualized by deception. Yet increasingly, peace replaced bitterness. I recognized that despite their moral bankruptcy, my parents had unintentionally given me valuable gifts: resilience, empathy for victims, and unwavering commitment to honesty. "We cannot choose our origin stories," I told Joseph as we decorated our first shared Christmas tree. "But we can choose what legacy we carry forward and what we leave behind." The parents who raised me chose deception as their life path. I choose transparency. They prioritized material gain over human connection. I prioritize integrity in relationships. They saw vulnerability as opportunity for exploitation. I see it as the foundation for genuine trust. Every day represents another brick in the foundation of the life I am building. One where promises are kept, trust is sacred, and connections are authentic. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me instead became the catalyst for creating a more meaningful existence than I might otherwise have known. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone close to you broke your trust completely? How did you find the strength to start over? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and redemption. Remember that your worth is never determined by how others treat you, only by the integrity with which you face life's challenges. Thank you for witnessing my story.